Hi everyone, this is Levgen, and today I want to talk about body shape, about how I work with body shape, and maybe a little bit about the background as well. But before to start, I just would like to say thank you to everyone who subscribed to me on Patreon and who sent me messages. I just also would like to remember you that we have direct message here on Patreon, so if you have some questions, feel free. You can write direct to me in messages, and I will answer to you as soon as possible. And also under every post here on Patreon, we have comments, so if you have some questions about this or other videos, feel free, write me a comment, and I gonna explain you and answer to you, maybe kind of like a short message, or record the video and explain you how it works. This is, for now, I'm gonna start and talk about probably like the simplest spot. It's about arm, and every time when I work with arm, doesn't matter if it's like upper arm, lower arm, forearm. Every time I think about the body shape, you can see here some lines and you can understand more or less the shape. So I try to keep it every time in my mind. For example, when we work with upper arm outside, right? Here are some lines. You can see it this one, you can see it this one. All of these lines follows the muscles and follow the shape. So every time when I work, I try to keep in my mind two things. First one, that all subject what I'm gonna place here has to look every time ahead. So every time when I work with design and when I have there some main subjects, doesn't matter, is it gonna be animal, skull, portrait, whatever, it has to look in the same way with my client, right? So when I place it here, it has to look this way. Second thing is, every time when I create a design, I try to keep in my mind that when we talk about also, for example, this place, and when I kind of like split it, on three parts, that the most informative and main thing has to be on first two parts of this area. So when my clients stay with someone, talk, stay on the street, just walk, that everyone who kind of like, I don't know, opponent of my client, talk to him on the street, can see everything on the tattoo and understand it pretty well. I don't like to do designs very static, so I try to keep dynamic in the design, and keep the design, some elements in design, follow the shape of the arm as well. So for example, when we talk about this, the upper arm, that some elements is gonna go, for example, down, up in this time, right? Or for example, something has to go down, or sometimes I place, for example, some elements what's going up this way, and here maybe this way, but another element is gonna go in opposite way, so then it brings more dynamic. So for example, when I open, let me just back, and for example open this design. I did this design kind of like week, 2 weeks ago, something like that. And you can see when I take, let me just, when I save this design, share, save in PNG, and then I can show you, save image, then I can show you everything. So for example, here my upper arm, right? I take the design and what I try. So you can see that the main subject is placing on the widest and most flat area on the upper arm. Second thing is the subject looking this way, looking ahead. when you stay with someone and looking on the person, you see the front part of the body, you know, and then it's gonna be more useful and smart when you see especially everything, you know, immediately. It's much better than when you stay, you know, and see only part, this one, and completely don't understand what's going on, right? So, and you can see that also I place this rose here, the skull is looking this way, you know, and also the main part of the design is on the front of the client body. So you also can see a little bit of dynamics. So I also didn't want to place the skull just front looking, you know, I just place it by side, and you can see how the skull is going more up, rose going in different direction, you know, and they bring a little bit of dynamic. So sometimes also when I see the design like this, I also thinking like, okay, maybe I can keep the shape of the upper arm. So I take sometimes, for example, not black, but pretty dark red, take Spectra. It's pretty nice brush, I really like it. And just start to draw. For example, I decide, that I want to keep this one going this way, you know, maybe add some small elements, then also take eraser, the same Spectra you're probably gonna find in painting brushes, Spectra. And so just remove the rest what I don't need, you know, just for example. Then I place this skull, I do clipping mask, and I can add here a little bit of background, but I see that I don't need the top, so I can, for example, remove the top and maybe remove here a little bit, it's too much. Yep. And for example, add a little bit just to back the skull and nope. Yeah, something like this. And every time when you want to show some empty lines, don't show it exactly empty, just a little bit, you know, just fill a little bit, something like this. And also want to show the rose, and rose has to go kind of like outside of the background, then it's gonna look much better. So, and every time when I look in some background, you know, I just take a brush and try to kind of like draw the background following the shape of the body at first, and then do the rest, you know. Something like this. But it also depends, you know, the background, how I play with the background. It also depends when I do, for example, the big design for the full arm, or I do just for example, one piece kind of like upper arm. So, and you can see I just removed a little bit of the light spot, you know, just to blend the rest of the skull in the background. And for example, what I do sometimes, I also take the design and work with curves a little bit to bring a little bit more contrast, to keep kind of like 30% very light area, 30% kind of like a mid-tone, and 30% very dark colors, you know. Then you have kind of like a balance in your tattoos. Because when I just choose colors like this, you know, the tattoo is going to be very dark, and when it's get healed, it's going to be more darker. It's going to be darker. So this is why I do it a little bit lighter. Then definitely when it's get healed and some light colors get a little bit darker, you know, then it's not going to look like too dark. So this is what about the upper arm, right? But also we have the same thing with for example, with inner, with forearm, everywhere. So with inner also, here's a good circle spot, you know, with kind of like a middle deep area small, but it's also pretty good to place something, you know, to pull it up from this way and circle. So kind of like when you create a design for the full sleeve, so and when you have something here, so sometimes it's really cool to pull up something, subject, you know, or any element of the background, and place something here in circle shape. This is the reason why very often you can see eye here, you know, people just place here eye every time, you know, and because the shape is perfect, you know. And also when I place fire, I also gonna work a little bit with the shape, you know, and place fire more or less this direction, you know, with a little bit, then place some subject here and maybe some fire here as well, or maybe pull out the fire this way, you know, like this. Completely the same when I work with a similar way when I work with oh, actually I forgot also the same rule like I showed you on upper arm, the same rule I used, the same rules I use in inner upper arm, you know. It's the most informative I try to keep here, the most informative part of the design, you know, and a little bit less informative there on the back. And also when I do something, try to use this flat area, because we don't have so many flat areas on arm, you know, so I try to place something big there usually, especially because they're very thin skin, you know, very difficult to work with like teeny details. Skin is very sensitive and very easy to work out and damage it, you know, so this is the reason why I place something big. And also I try to, actually I can show to you probably in one design. Let me just find it here. Yeah, for example, this design I did on forearm. So you can see that here I place this eye, you know, place it more or less, if I can call it that way, because we have like one wide flat area, you know, so I decided to take bigger picture, you know, and just place it right there. And also I can simplify it pretty well, you know, and don't show so many teeny details, texture, everything like here, you know. I can make it a little bit more flat. But also you can see I place it this direction, you know. You can see the eye more or less what it's followed the shape of the shape of the body as well. So here you can see, and more or less you can understand pretty well everything, and it's really good place for the tattoo, right? right. So the same way here, so look this way, so look ahead. And like I said, when we work with 3/3, you know, then first 2/3 is going to be the most informative part. So completely the same, similar thing I every time use when I do. Oh, I can remove it. Okay, it doesn't matter. I can work with forearm, for example, also pull everything up from back to the front and place the subject, I don't know, face, for example, this way, you know, or also when I work with the inner part, it's completely the same. It's very easy to place something flat here, you know, but also because we have sometimes this line and this muscle, you know, what's gonna be like a little bit more visible, you know, like and you have some bumps and dips there, you know, so this is why I also try to place everything kind of like this way, you know, looking ahead, you know, but we have more space to place very informative parts, so I try to use like everything. And also follow the shape. I usually pull out, you know, some backgrounds or some elements from here this way, you know, and pull this way, and then from here go this way, you know, then the design looks like wrapping around the arm, you know. It doesn't work like every time. I mean, I don't use it like in every design, but I try to keep it in my mind, you know, and use it as often as possible, you know. And then it's, you can see it's kind of like a wrapping around the tattoo. So, and also use this way. You can go up, you know, or you can go opposite way, you can go down, you know, so. And from here, it's gonna go the opposite, behind the forearm, you know, and you also can pull it this way, or from here you can go this way. So every time when you work with arm sleeve, it's very important to keep in your mind the shape of the body. So the same, for example, when I work with, I don't know, whatever, when I work with neck, you know, it's like, you also can see here some lines, you know, and every time I try to keep it in my mind that flow is gonna be going down or going up, or if you want, you also can do the same, but going down, so this way. But what I found out that is very nice to use the subject what's kind of like looking this way, you know, so looking ahead together with my client, you know, but and actually also I try to keep the same thing. So this part is going to be more informative, and this part, and here at the back is going to be just the mostly background, you know, nothing very specific. Also I can show you the design, what I did. Let me just find, yeah, you can see this design right here. Yeah, you can see the background is going mostly this way, kind of like a wrapping around the subject and wrapping around the neck as well, you know, but the subject is looking this way, and as you can see, this part is the most informative, you know, and you can see everything. Okay, let's talk about other designs, you know, and also the neck. For example, we work with whatever, guys, I don't know, back. All right. And also sometimes I use this area pretty flat, you know, and can place something just looking straight, you know, but But usually also when I try to use the flow, I try to remember in my mind, and when, for example, it's female back, then sometimes I try to make it a little bit more narrow, show them how it's going down, everything, and to show the back a little bit smaller visually. I mean, like visually. But when we talk about male back, then I try to keep flow from down to the top, and make it slightly wider. Then the back looks like a little bit more massive. The same, for example, when we talk about, I'm gonna attach all of this body pictures of, oh, sorry. 1 second, let me just find it. Yeah. So when we talk about the back, for example, every time I try to create the design, what's gonna be like pretty massive, for the man, and the flow is going down or flow going up, doesn't matter, but I try to go from inside to outside, to show the back bigger, and more massive, more masculine. But every time when we, for example, when I talk about the female back, I try to go opposite way. So for me, it's more important to do female back more elegant, and for example, play a little bit to show it a little bit more tiny, and more accent here on this part, and maybe to show it kind of like this way, to play the accent, especially here, to show the back as tiny, and don't go too wide here on shoulders, more straight and up, but more tiny and more narrow here on side, and show a little bit wider here on the bottom, something like that. This is just talking about the shape, but I don't do back so often, when we talk about, for example, designs. What I usually do, so you can see here, for example, it's mostly kind of like here, for example, you can see the shoulder blade, what I did. And here you also can see that the shape is going this way, and it's going this way. So try to show some flow, and also you can see a little bit small details on the background. Some of them is going on the first plan, then the skull, and it's also destroying and going up. And I don't know, let me just find more new designs, because they're pretty randomly here. This is the front, what I planned for one guy here in the United States. And also, as you can see, I also try to play a little bit with the flow on the background, and you can see it's a little bit more muted, not so bright, not so sharp. And what is gonna be on the first plan, is gonna be much lighter. And the picture, I see this gypsy woman, what is like very static, there's like no so many dynamic. So this is the reason why I decided to add a little bit smoke to place some dynamic to this design. And okay, it skipped, doesn't matter. So also here the tie, what I did, right? So I also, you can see that the first 2/3 I did more informative, and also the design looking ahead with my client, and it's also, I pull it from this side, to up, and skull looking ahead, you know, and it's kind of like spinning, you know, this way. So the full design not static. And you have here the first plan, you can see what's going on, and it's spinning inside and, you know, going to the background. So you can see I also use these rules almost in every tattoo, and every time when it's very static subject, I try to play sometimes with background, with different thing. Here, for example, I did this design for calf. Let me just, yeah, it's here. So I did it for calf, just flat on the back side, you know, and also to keep a little bit dynamic, I also added some fire here just to wrap this heart, you know, heart and hand around. So, and to show that something is going around of the subject as well. Here also the calf, also the middle part of the calf, but you can see I decided to place because of the portrait, I just decided to, here is the middle, you know, decided to place the portrait a little bit turning, and you can see the portrait looking outside, not inside, when my client has to every time turn his leg, you know, to show the design and show the tattoo, you know, looking outside. So when client's standing, you immediately see everything, you know. And you can see I focused mostly on the face, you know, and just this part I moved a little bit more inside, you know, what is like less informative, not so interesting. This video you can have on on YouTube. They're just time lapse. If you just let me know if you're interested, write down here in comments if you're interested. I will show this video on here on Patreon, more not time lapse, more like real time video. So just let me know. And you can see here I decided don't use a lot of different lines on the background, because we have here kind of like shoulder of the girl, you know, this line, also the face, you know, that it brings a little bit dynamic. She also turning the head, she doesn't look like straight ahead, you know. So this is why I decided don't add extra lines, because I have already some lines what build up some dynamic, you know. When we talk about like also more interesting projects, you know, like let me just figure out what I can show you what's gonna be like very nice. For example, this design, it's pretty flat picture, you know, for forearm, but let me just, because usually arm, forearm, leg is the most popular, you know, places where we work. So this is the reason why I usually show designs on forearm more often. So you also can see that the picture is pretty flat. So this is the reason why you can see on the background some of these lines, you know, just to bring some dynamic, you know, and show how the background kind of like wrapping around the subject, you know, and bring a little bit of dynamic to the design, you know. And you also can see that when I switch off everything just back to the background, you also can see how I created that. So I did this one, then add some lines, play a little bit with it, you know, just to understand how to build the shape, and then add a little bit just, you know. But usually I try to at first to make kind of like a just base, you know, just to play it this way, to play it this way, just try to understand how to wrap it, maybe here, to create the background like this, then take this water pen, this water pen, you know, and sometimes, and for example, create a new layer and just do some lines. You know, and create kind of like a background, you know, something like that. So this is what I had here. So you can see how soft here on side, how sorry, how soft the background is, you know. So I just use the regular brush at first, soft brush, and then add a little bit of different lines to create the design, you know. And then I just use the hands, and I use the hat separate, you know. Place the Bitcoin, color it. The guys wanted to use this glow, you know. As you can see how I use this eye, you know, just to place the shiny effect on it. And let's show me the last design. What, I don't know, for example, whatever. Here was the hand, for example. You also can see that I try to pick the flow. When I remove the rows exactly, you can see how line goes and going kind of like wrapping around the hand, you know. So every time I just try to keep it in my mind that I can place the design this way, you know, like, and going this way, kind of like it's wrapping around. So then design works together with the body flow, you know. And you can see that also I place to bring more dynamic, you know, and show that something is going on around the subject as well. Then I place this, the background is going this way, yeah, but rose is going completely opposite way, so kind of like a break the background. So then you can see everything. And also when you have the spot what is pretty flat, use this area smart, you know. Don't place there like billion of different small texture details, everything. So place one element pretty big, and then you can show there everything. Don't place there like a million different elements, you know, and get a mess of everything. So also, I don't know, this design as well, you know. Oh, I promised it's gonna be last, but okay. By the way, yeah, you also can see how I play with the body shape, you know. So when I take this all, let me just, do you want to see the full process of creating especially this design? I'm just interested what design is more interesting for you, so then I can just maybe explain especially everything on this design as well. So you also can see that the arm, the leg, you know, the tie, and how I use the shape of the tie. So you also can see kind of like one line. Let me use white color here. One line here. The also is going here. Then also the flow, you know, is going this way, and this flow is going this way. So it's every time kind of like a wrapping around and follow the shape of the leg, you know. So the shape every time is going kind of like this way. And then the design with the body looks more natural. And then we have the face here on the most flat area. So here we have the hands, you know, and some just background around. So the most flat area I try to use pretty smart, you know, to use on the top what is like flatter. The face down, we have already here some spots, you know, I use for the hands because it's more narrow, you know, and for the background, I try to use the background just to follow the shape of the body part. Okay guys, I hope it was helpful for you. If you have more questions, if I didn't answer to your question, so just let me know in direct message or in comments under this video. You know, if you have some questions about specific design, you know, just let me know. I will open this design in next video and explain to you more about everything, layer by layer, brush by brush, you know, it's like everything what I use over there, I also gonna explain it to you. Thank you so much guys, and see you in next video.